I can edit at the beginning. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, we're ready?
So, yep.
Okay. So, thank you everybody for coming to my speech here. This is going to be a persuasive speech on whether or not the U.S. should adopt a two-child policy. So I want you to imagine that every morning when you get up in the morning and you're getting ready for your day, a stranger comes to your house and rifles through your closet and selects an outfit for you, and that's what you have to wear for the day. Or perhaps they bring like their own bag of clothes and they pick something out of that and they put it on you, and that's your look. Not a turtleneck person? Sorry, you are today. Or imagine you have wanted to be a doctor your whole life. Well, this same stranger says, nope, that's not going to happen. Instead, you're going to be a florist. Same difference, right? Or maybe your dream has been to have a large family and 3 children and a dog and be a wife or a husband. Well, Mr. Stranger has some ideas about that as well. He says, nope, 2 children is plenty. 3 is excessive. And you'll listen, because if you don't listen, then you'll be subject to really large fines and even possibly forced abortion. So believe it or not, there are some countries in the world that have adopted a policy of this kind in an effort to curb population growth. China, India, and Vietnam have all at some point had a reduced child policy. But not to worry, the purpose of my speech today is to persuade you that a 2-child policy would not work in the U.S. And that is because it would be unnecessary because of current population trends, and also that it would damage the economy. So probably the best known example of a 2-child policy is modern day China. From 2015 until now, China has had a 2-child policy. So basically, Chinese citizens are not allowed legally to have more than 2 children. There are some exceptions. And in fact, that is a relaxed policy. From the 1970s to 2015, Chinese citizens were only allowed to have 1 child. And the reason for that is there were some concerns that the population growth would basically overwhelm economic growth that was happening in China at the time. And in the words of Deng Xiaoping, who was the leader at the time, he was wanting to ensure that the fruits of economic growth were not devoured by population growth. But the good news is that in the US, fertility rates are actually declining. So there's a couple of indicators that are looked at in regards to population growth, and one of them is total fertility rate. And what that means is it's basically the number of children that each woman has. And another important number is replacement level fertility. And that is an indicator that it's 2.1, and that is the number of children on average that each woman needs to have for the incoming population to replace the previous population. So, according to the CIA World Factbook, the U.S. is actually number 143 of 244 countries as far as total fertility rate goes. So in other words, there's 142 countries that have higher total fertility rates than we do, and our rate is 1.87. So we are currently under the replacement level fertility rate. And that number has been on the decline for some time, since the 1960s actually. So you might say, what is the big deal? We could probably use a few less people in the world. Things are getting a little crowded around here. But there are some consequences to not achieving that replacement level fertility. So, when population declines, so does the number of people in the workforce. And the workforce is basically the number of people at any given time that are willing and able to work. So it doesn't include people who are disabled or, for example, stay-at-home moms, students. So what happens is, at some point, everyone in the current workforce either retires or dies, and the incoming workforce needs to be at least as many people as there are in the current workforce. Otherwise, there won't be enough people to fill available positions. So you might say, well, isn't that a good thing, right? There's more jobs for us. But as a matter of fact, the current U.S. unemployment rate is 4.1, which you might say, well, it's not zero, so we still have room to improve. But actually, full employment is considered to be 4%. So at any given time, people are going to be in between jobs, even if that's not for an extended amount of time. So that 4% basically accounts for those people. And there are a few other factors, but that's basically the idea. And so what happens when the workforce, the available workforce gets below that, equilibrium, when it gets to a suboptimal level, there's not the proper people to fit in the available positions. So it would be as if me, who's worked in makeup for my entire life, went to try and get a job on a construction site. So what would happen is there would be a serious reduction in productivity on that particular site. And that's just an example, but basically that's the idea. If the available workforce doesn't fit the jobs that are available, if there's not enough labor to go around, then productivity overall would be reduced, which means a reduction in profit, which means a reduction in wealth overall. So there's another factor in this as well. With the declining workforce is a decline in the number of taxpayers. So taxpayers are the people who provide revenue to the government, and that, of course, is a problem. If there's less of them, there's less revenue. And that revenue goes to pay for social services, such as the fire department, teachers, public pensions like Social Security. So, which is an issue because, at some point we're going to be the retiring community. We're going to be 65. And if there's less people on the incoming workforce, then there won't be enough money to cover our Social Security, for example, which is a problem that needs to be addressed. So there's two ways to address that. Either our national debt can be increased, or there can be an increase in our tax rate, which most people, would not appreciate. And what that means further is with an increase in your taxes, then that's a decrease in your take-home pay, it's a decrease in your disposable income, which means you'll be consuming less, which means less will be demanded and less will be produced, and it's an overall shrinking effect on the economy. So, to summarize, a two-child policy in the U.S. would suppress the economy and reduce the quality of life overall for all American citizens. Because our total fertility rate is currently below the replacement level fertility, it would cause a reduction in the incoming workforce, and a decline in the incoming workforce would cause a decline in taxes and a decline in production and prosperity overall. So I hope if a proposal for a two-child household or a two-child limit ever comes across the ballot, you'll consider the economic effects of it. Thank you very much for coming and watching my speech. Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Questions?
All right. Yay. And